Restore chat. Boom. Are they talking in the chat? Then I think we're live. Oh, we are live. We must be live. Hello, Ross. How you living?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. It's been a crazy couple months, but I'm still out here, man, surviving.
Yeah, I mean about that. Like before we even get into anything else, I recall after the release of the King Von magnum opus, you were a little bit concerned about your safety. What's the status of that? Like, have you had any drillers pull up to the UK lately?
Yeah, I believe they were on my ass, in the words of King Von. But a lot of internet threats, but what I'm saying, I'm still out here untouched. So nothing really popping. But yeah, man, getting a lot of crazy shit in the DMs. The DMs have been a war zone lately.
Really?
But what I mean, I'm still out here doing my thing, so
Anything
can't be
credible?
stopped. I don't think there's been anything credible. I think it's just like a lot of internet haters. At the same time, like I do move cautiously. I don't do anything dumb that I would think would catch me slipping. But man, you know what I mean? That's the internet for you, man. I'm sure you get a lot of crazy stuff coming through too.
Yeah, but I'm right in the middle of everything. And like from your perspective, I mean, the UK, very, very far away from our perspective. I don't necessarily see the Oblakian soldiers. Yes, they may have been willing to pull off a murder in front of a luxury store in the middle of a downtown metropolitan area. Are they going to be boarding flights to go to the UK and then obtaining weapons there so that they can carry out a hit on a YouTuber? I mean, this all sounds kind of far fetched, but I mean, I'm also living in a world where I'm constantly being told that someone's going to take my life. I'm right in the middle of stuff. Realistically, do I think that I do much that kind of rises to that occasion? Not really, and I kind of feel the same way about you. Like, yeah, maybe some drugged up yokel who was right in the heat of the moment, upset about the Vaughn documentary. You could kind of imagine it, but it still seems pretty unlikely, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you get the drop on me and you got to go to the airport and book a flight, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to have that drop for very long. So I don't know if I see it. But at the same time, you know what I'm saying? I do want to come back to the United States soon, and you know what I mean? I think I'm going to be okay. I guess it's a case of not doing any dumb stuff, not doing anything crazy. But at the same time, I've always just found it kind of absurd that it's like you're going to slide on the YouTuber reading tweets. Like if you're gonna do that, you got to slide on like Chicago Sun Times.
Right.
Really, you got to slide on Elon Musk because really he's keeping a lot of this information up there. But you know what I mean? There doesn't seem to be a lot of heat from Oblock on Elon Musk for hosting the many tweets.
No, yeah, definitely. I wonder if that has ever even entered the mind of any of the Oblakians or the 6030ians or the Young Moneyians or any of these characters to take out somebody who works for like the local newspaper. I kind of doubt it. I kind of feel like that's probably not at the front of their mind. And I feel like the YouTubers, maybe that's like a little bit more their speed. They actually watch YouTube videos. They probably don't read the newspaper. But I still just don't really see the murder plot being carried out. And like people would always try to use Zach TV as an example. Like, oh, if you're like a hood journalist and you get too close to the subject matter, they're going to take you out. I've been assured by multiple people that that was like a mistaken identity thing, and that Zach was actually pretty beloved within his section and all over Chicago, and that nobody really like wanted that for him. It was just kind of a wrong place, wrong time type thing. So yeah, I think you're all right. Okay, so just while this is at the front of my mind, you posted and deleted an image of yourself earlier today in which you were basically imitating Malcolm X in his infamous standing by the window with a gun photo that has been, echoed throughout pop culture many times throughout my life. I've seen this. You took a very similar photo, but you were holding a knife. So kind of making, like, from a pessimistic point of view, kind of making a joke about Malcolm X and kind of making a joke about British knife crime all at once. I noticed that it has been deleted. Can we get a little bit of a window into it's just me. Well, that's awkward. Oh, he's back. Yo. He doesn't look like he can hear me.
Yo, I lost you for a second there, but I'm back.
Oh, we're back. Okay. People at home, disregard that. Did you hear anything that I said? Where'd that cut out?
No, we were still on just wrapping up with the Oblockians.
Oh, okay. So this is my follow up question. Is earlier today you posted an Instagram photo that you have now deleted where you were sort of imitating Malcolm X, posted up by the window. He's got a gun in the photo. You had a knife. I can imagine why you deleted it, because two controversial things: white guy in hip hop media and white guy making a joke about, well, about a famous black leader who's been dead for many decades, but then also making a little bit of a joke about, British knife crime, which, it's easy for us to joke around about that because it's not really hitting close to home. But for you, I would imagine this is a little bit more heated. What was the idea with that photo, and why did it get deleted?
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? I had a stern talking to from Van Lathan after posting that photo.
That's kind of
And
his gig. Like, he shows up when someone needs a stern talking to, or at least he thinks.
yeah, to be honest, man, it's a weird one because like I've been taking a lot of photos recently. I'm trying to get more active on Instagram,
Uh-huh.
and I'll keep it real with you. I didn't really think it was going to be that big of a deal. Like people are saying it's like you were comparing yourself to Malcolm X. Now I was kind of like trying to pay homage to Malcolm X, and I don't know if anyone's going to believe this, but like the reaction I was kind of expecting, aside from like the normal hate that I would get, I was kind of thinking people would be like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like he's kind of paying homage to Malcolm X, who's like more of a, black political activist, as opposed to maybe, the hip hop stars that I usually kind of pay homage to and show my respect to. Like Malcolm X is somebody that I kind of have always looked up to and admired, as far as like somebody who really achieved great things and really stood up for what he believed in. I thought it was a cool picture. I didn't really put too much thought into it, and I was kind of like, I wasn't like trying to make light of anything really, but I thought it was kind of like my thing of I've got tons of people that have been threatening to kill me lately. I kind of be peeping through the curtains too. We don't have guns in the UK. I took a picture with a knife. I put it in black and white. I thought it kind of looked cool, and I was really trying to show love, but that shit went sideways. And you know what I'm saying? I switched up the caption. I was like, let me try and like just make it a bit more clear I'm trying to pay homage. Then Van Lathan hit me up and basically was like, bro, that ain't gonna run. And you know what I mean? I wasn't trying to annoy anyone with it, so I did cave in and take it down. Like that kind of did cut me a little deep, because I was like, I was really wasn't trying to do anything bad with it. Like I was kind of showing love, but at the same time, man, I feel like sometimes when Van speaks, you got to listen. So you know what I'm saying? I took that one to heart, and I'm gonna do a like a sit down or a interview with him soon and
Right.
go into it.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
man, I got pressed on that one, and like I kind of see where people are coming from, but like that really wasn't my intention. And I kind of thought like, oh, I'm gonna kind of show people that I actually like kind of have an interest in maybe the deeper, more political side of black culture. But that was an L in the end.
well, yeah, I mean, you want to show people that your reference base goes back more than, 5 or 10 years at times, and that can be important, kind of impress people like, oh, look, I know what the fuck is going on in the history of the culture, etc. But I mean, there's a thing that occurs where it's like, if you're a white guy, especially a white guy in hip hop, and you try to do almost anything that in any way compares yourself to or puts yourself in the same category as important black people, in particular, important black political leaders, it's just going to be perceived in the most negative possible light. And on one hand, I do think it's important as, a white person in the culture to kind of stand on business. And like when people get the wrong idea about something like that, there's a certain part of me that wants to say, actually, it wasn't a statement of racism. And actually, I think that you are psychotic because you chose to perceive it that way. But then on the other hand, it's like, do you really want the smoke? Do you really want to spend the next week talking about this? Do you want Charlemagne to make you the donkey of the day? Because these are all real possibilities at a certain point, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really trying to stand on business on this one. I kind of just thought, like, I really thought it was a cool picture, and I guess I thought wrong that like it was more like a style thing. As far as like I had taken like a bunch of pictures. Let's be real, I'd taken quite a lot of pictures with the knife, and that was one that I just thought was interesting. I kind of took it on a bit of a whim. And you know what I'm saying, threw it in black and white, thought it was kind of cool, threw the Malcolm X one in there. I don't know. I guess I just had the wrong idea. I kind of thought people might think it was like interesting. I had this idea recently that I wanted to take like Instagram more seriously, and I was gonna do like a bunch of different pictures from like famous rap covers and like famous artworks and stuff, and put myself in it. Again, it's sort of a thing of like I don't think that. Let's say I took a funny picture with my shirt off with the bullet hole like 50 Cent. I don't think I'm 50 Cent, and I'm not trying to disrespect 50 Cent. I'm just trying to like just show that I'm a fan. Realistically, like in a way, it was really just me trying to be like, I'm a fan of Malcolm X as well
Right.
as all
And
these
and
rappers. Like, what do you think? But that shit backfired heavily, man. And I'm a hold the L.
but that is weird though that like if you were to do something that made you look like 50 Cent, I don't think anybody would care at all because not a famous political leader. Like there's a certain level of sensitivity when it comes to religious leaders and people who are in charge of political movements and stuff like that. That yeah, that I could see how that would maybe be perceived the wrong way. But anyway, I mean, okay. So getting into this young boy thing, coming
But
off the
before we go on, I just want to say one thing, which is like I had always I'm a big fan of obviously like the Malcolm X biography and the movie too,
right.
and like there'd always been a little part of me that had almost been like people always hit me with that thing of just like, oh, all you cover is negativity in the black community, even though I do actually cover a lot of white artists and even like white gangbangers if you want to go there. But like I had often thought to myself like maybe one day when I got time, like maybe let me make a little Malcolm X documentary or MLK documentary or a documentary about like an aspect of black culture that I think actually, not that it doesn't get enough shine, but as far as like people saying I only use my channel for negativity, like, you know what I mean? There was a part of me that thought like, oh, maybe one day I'll do like a Malcolm X documentary and try and like really sort of trace the origins of his movement into like modern day culture. And sort of like since the reception on this one has been so bad, I feel like that's a no go now. But like,
That's interesting.
it's something that I'd thought of because I feel like I have this skill as far as like untangling history and helping people like understand the relevance of certain things. But yeah, probably not the one now.
Well, no, I wonder how that would do because I mean, you cultivated a certain audience, and I just wonder if you did a 2 hour Malcolm X documentary, which I'm sure you can make very interesting. And I, for some reason, when I was a kid, I read the book at least once and watched the movie at least once, which is kind of weird. Like looking back on it, I feel like a lot of people wouldn't necessarily expect me to have that reference base or whatever. But whenever I see people talking about straightening their hair, in my head, I refer to it as a conch, which is what it's called in the movie. And I don't know that anybody has actually like used that phrase in real conversation in the past couple decades. But yeah, that's always. I wonder how far your audience would be willing to go, and would it be the kind of thing where maybe they check it out, but they're exiting out within the first 10 minutes after they realize that it's more of a serious project and not going to have that much, bloodthirstiness.
I mean, you know, there's almost like some reverse bloodthirstiness in there as far as like
Yeah.
there's still a lot of excitement in the Malcolm X story, and even so, like even exploring like the theories on like who might have been responsible for his assassination. And again, people always hit me with that thing of like, why don't you do a video on the KKK since you like criminals so much? And there's a little part of me that's like, I'm not going to front. Obviously, I do not fuck with the KKK, but like a video on the history of the KKK might be interesting. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
I would paint them in a
You're
negative
telling me
light.
that if Netflix had on Front Street next time you logged in, 3-part series, how the KKK did this like really powerful seeming documentary, you're telling me you wouldn't want to watch that? Sometimes I feel like I need to hide the fact that I've been interested in hate groups my entire life, and I've always found it within myself to do a little bit of research about what's going on with the skinheads, the Klan, the more modern like alt-right era of hate groups and stuff like that. Like why would I not be interested in that? And I kind of resent that about people when they're like, oh, you only are interested in this like in black violence, and it's like, well, I've also spent huge parts of my life watching documentaries about the Hells Angels or like any other like kind of dissident group, violent group, criminal organization. Same thing with Vlad. You've seen that he's gotten taken in that direction where he's interviewing hella people from prison gangs, the leaders of the Aryan Brotherhood. He's doing all kinds of Italian mafia stuff. In my case, I have been doing like rap content for like 8 years, and I've been listening to rap for like 30 years. So I do feel a little bit more specialized to be having conversations with rappers and whatnot. But I mean, I've always been drawn to crime. Like at least if we're talking in terms of content, not even bothering to speak on my actual life. But I'm interested in all of that. And this is one thing I've noticed about myself. Maybe you can resonate with this. Is that I know so many people, especially women, who are really fascinated by true crime. They love learning about serial killers. And I've tried to watch some of that content. I even saw Drake when he was doing the Bobby Altoff interview. Drake says, yeah, I sit around and I watch murder documentaries on Netflix or whatever. And I've tried to watch some of that. One that I watched recently was like, the basic gist of it was just some crazy guy. He would ride on freight trains. He would get off on the freight trains. He would go into random women's houses and he would stab them to death. And I just didn't really find it that interesting because this is just a lone psychopath. Like that's, the fact that one person has the urge to kill 8 women before he gets caught. I understand that this is like how some percentage of human beings are built, and it is interesting, but I don't find it that interesting. Whereas a bunch of guys who come together to rob banks or create a gang and murder their enemies or whatever, I mean, I find that a lot more interesting. Just the idea of people like uniting in order to commit crimes for the furtherance of the gang or their own. It's just like I've put together a lot of businesses over the years, and it takes like a certain degree of organization in order to create a business. And a gang is essentially just like a business that exists to, commit criminal acts. I can't really justify it in my head because the odds of getting caught seem so unbelievably high, but I'm fascinated by people who come together in groups to do this sort of thing. It doesn't have anything to do with race. It's just the fact that I'm fascinated by people who choose to base their life around crime, I guess.
Yeah, there's something really fascinating about like criminal enterprise. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I find it less interesting to look at like a random slasher that just runs around slashing people up because they're just crazy.
Right.
Like the idea, like I've always been, infatuated with mafia as far as like watching The Sopranos when I was younger and The Godfather, and it's just like the idea that it's like, a secret society of guys that are essentially, you know, operating outside of the confines of the law for their own benefit. As law-abiding citizens, it's hard not to have a fascination with like, individuals that have decided that they're just going to completely go against the system. And let's be real, like even though I don't condone crime or organized crime, it is interesting and pretty cool when you see a group of guys getting away with it. I mean, when you find out that some mafia boss has been caught, and then it all gets revealed, like all of the stuff that they had been getting up to in their rap sheet, and all of the like, the enterprise that they controlled, illegal gambling, murder for hire. Bro, that shit is undeniably interesting, and you can't deny it, and realistically, it's a big part of music culture now too. You've got drill music. Even before drill music, you've got like drug dealer rap. Even fictionalized, like you got someone like Rick Ross, who's basically his whole rap persona was like fake organized crime. I'm selling bricks, we're shipping bricks across the Atlantic and all this stuff. And it's like, the guy seemingly didn't even do any of that stuff. But like, it's hard not to be fascinated by that story and to just think like, yo, I want to know how you ship the packs across the Atlantic. I want to know.
Right. And then and like that's one thing because there's a certain amount of organization to it and stuff, but I can see how like a lot of the Chicago stuff is even more fascinating because a lot of the King Von murders are literally like him driving down the street with his friend or whatever, and then he sees an enemy and he jumps out of the car and just starts shooting them in broad daylight. It's like in comparison, just mailing a package of drugs across the country or like filling up a 18 wheeler with pounds of cocaine or whatever. It's just like that's kind of simplistic in comparison to the sheer audacity that it would take to commit like a murder in out in public like that. So to me, it's not really like that fascinating, but because okay, like you have crime and then you have music, and quite often they don't really interact at all. But like it's easy for me to see why the BMF thing is the type of stuff that they want to make multiple documentaries and a whole TV show, et cetera, about because they were basically acting like rappers, signing rappers, working with rappers. And just the fact that there are celebrities and musicians involved with all of this, basically acting as like advertisements for their drug gang, that's pretty fascinating. And then you go beyond that, you get to like the O Block era, and you have somebody like King Von, who's like legitimately a star. He makes really, really good music. He's a prolific social media user, and he's basically mapping out a lot of his crimes in both the music and on social media. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of people, if they could act like that's not interesting to them, they're lying or in denial.
The thing about the King Von story that's so fascinating is that like this guy, despite despite the international gaslighting operation that's been going on to try and convince me and everyone else that Von never did anything that he rapped about, like Von was the real deal killer rapper who did all the shit that he said. he was never supposed to be a famous rapper. Like, this is the crazy thing about the Von story, is that like he just started making money. Like you see in the documentary, I've got clips where Von's talking about like, yo, I wasn't even trying to rap. I was just trying to get around Dirk so I could rob some rappers.
Mm.
And like Von was really about it. He was never supposed to be this star, and he was like an incredible example of just pure talent that was just undeniable. It was like his talent for rapping and telling stories was so good that it basically just like superseded his reputation as a multiple murderer, and like, you know, the support that he got from Lil Durk. It's like it was just this incredible and like shocking story of like two things that are never supposed to be. You're never meant to be a superstar, pop star, hip hop sensation and have seven bodies. Like that ain't supposed to happen. Like that has never happened. It will probably never happen again. Like it's just like one of the most crazy and compelling stories I would say in like modern rap
Yeah,
history. I think people are
and
going to be talking about Von for decades
and
about
I
the
mean,
way that he went about it.
even if you leave the bodies out of it, J Mane keeps telling this story about the person on my shirt, Fredo Santana, pulling up on him and shooting at him or whatever, and him using a woman as a human shield. Great story. Bunch of different interview clips where he talks about it. Even just the idea that, like, oh, this guy Fredo that we all loved as a rapper, that he was really doing shit like that, that's pretty fucking interesting to people because we're so used to, you know, a lot of rappers over the years even when I was young, if you had told me, hey, this guy that you're listening to rapping about shooting people, he's never shot anybody, I wouldn't have been surprised at all because even as a kid, I'm like, of course, the person rapping about it is probably not the person who did it. They probably have somebody who's the guy who actually did it. That even as a young kid, that kind of made sense to me that a lot of these guys were probably telling the tales of people that they knew, you know. But part of me feels like we might never have another King Von. That the documentary that you did on him might be like the best rapper killer content that might ever come to be. I don't know if anybody else is ever going to be able to get away with as many as he did.
I mean, it do hit different when the rappers actually be doing what they're rapping about. You know what I mean? It's like it's this crazy thing, and I tried to get this across in the documentary, both about Von and Youngboy, is that like there's almost this like thirst, this unquenchable thirst for like realness in
Mm.
hip hop. And you know, one of the early examples that I look at is 50 Cent, man. Like that guy. Look,
That's a
from
good
what we
point.
understand about 50, he wasn't a killer, but he really got shot 9 times and survived. And just like Von, like you're not supposed to kill 7 people and become a rap superstar. You ain't supposed to get shot 9 times and then go back into the studio and then just like basically diss everybody who shot you.
Mm.
That ain't supposed to happen. So I think you're right, man. I don't think we're ever going to see another King Von. I mean, you know, if the goddamn Chicago police can help it, hopefully we're not going to see another King Von.
Well, there are
But
definitely King Vons roaming the streets of Chicago right now. They're just probably not good at rapping.
yeah, that's true, man. It's like, you know, there's I mean, you had Cairo on the show recently, right?
You
And
think
he was
he's a
talking
King
about
Von? He was complaining about Sean Cotton saying that he didn't have wooski energy.
no, I'm not saying he's a King Von. I would never say that. But what I would say is like, you know, he was talking about what was it, Mad Max, that you know, the alleged snitching on his deathbed. But you know, story goes he had all type of bodies, and you know, I don't think he ever attempted to rap. But then again, on the other hand, you had a guy like Shooter Shells that was you know, meant to be really about it and trying to rap. But this is the ironic thing. Even though Von lost his life for reasons ultimately not connected to his life in the streets, like that kind of energy unfortunately does seem to catch up with you. Like I don't think we were ever going to see a 50, 60-year-old King Von retired and like doing a Vlad interview about the bodies he really caught. Like, you know, unfortunately he, you know, was putting out all kinds of gangster violent energy in all types of directions, and you know, unfortunately that caught up with him in a deadly fashion. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying by any means that it was like uh, you know, meant to be that Von died, but it was just like, you know, he was fighting this person and he might have fought that person. He was punching people in studios. He was apparently still shooting at people from cars with Lil Durk. You know, eventually something would have happened, and you know, it was what it was, man.
I know. I kind of look forward to the era in like 20 years. You know how Vlad has had all these guys on his channel who will have these extremely open conversations about Tupac and the Tupac murder and all these other hits that were ordered around that time, etc. And it's super fascinating because everybody's dead and everybody and the few people who are left are just down to tell the stories. And we will get there at some point in Chirac because I have had conversations off camera about exactly who dropped who. And as soon as you start talking to these dudes off camera, they will start telling you shit that you cannot fucking believe. Now, they're smart enough to not say it on camera, which is nice, but that's for now. One day, 20 years from now, all these people are going to actually tell stories about what really happened because I've had some pretty revealing conversations and even interviews with people where I'm sitting there doing the interview and the whole time I'm thinking, God, if I could just only ask them about the fact that they did this to this person, and that would be the most exhilarating thing on earth for people to know about. But obviously, you can't talk about it right now. But you know, there will come a time where people do talk about it.
There's something weird going on in hip hop, man, where there's almost like, there's a direct reward in proportion to the dirt that you did and your
You know.
willingness to talk about it. It's really a case of like, did you the more points, the more coins, the more clout that you're gonna get is realistically in proportion to the dirt that you've done. Because ultimately, like you say about true crime, the reason why drill music is so popular is because it's essentially hip hop true crime. It's gangster rap on steroids. People don't care unless the rapper really did what they're talking about these days. It's a sad state of affairs. And I'm sort of in the scene talking about the things that go on. I like to think that I provide a kind of level-headed analysis about it.
Right.
But ultimately, bro, we're living in like there's a Youngboy lyric where he says like where he's dissing King Von and he's saying that this is that Squid Game, and it's like I said in the doc, I was like, that's a more profound bar than you think, because like realistically we're literally living in a dystopian future where these guys are engaging in open gang warfare, making music about it, and everybody's just following along with popcorn, speculating on who the next body's going to be. Like this is culture today, and it's hard to take a step back and realize like how crazy that is.
I know, and it's crazy to me too that the King Von era, the Youngboy era, etc., basically occur like immediately after the SoundCloud era. And I don't remember ever having any conversations about, well, do you think the Smoke Perp got any bodies, or do you think Trippie Redd shot somebody, etc. And like, not to even take anything away from somebody like Trippie Redd, who granted he like did grow up in like a grimy ass area, and who knows what the fuck he's done in his life. But we just weren't having those conversations then. And a lot of those dudes, if you were to look at their lyrics, a lot of the lyrics are really like not that far off from a Youngboy or a King Von, because there's a lot of pull up on your block and shoot the mop stick at your mom and all this bullshit, whatever. But it was just kind of taken for granted that like, oh, a lot of this, the music might be cool, they're picking weird beats, they got cool colored hair, but nobody was really tripping about if it was real or not. And then that sort of led right into this era where you're basically perceived as like a joke unless you really did a large majority of the shit that you're talking about, which is kind of interesting. And I wonder how we get away from that, because sometimes it's hard to imagine what the next era of rap is. Because I feel like any movement or any style of content will one day hit stagnation, and it's been kind of hard to imagine that throughout all these years listening to hip hop. And sometimes lately it kind of feels like, okay, everything that there is to be done has been done, and now we've entered into an superstars that pop off from that. But in terms of new movements, it's kind of hard to imagine exactly where it goes from here, because we've gone so full bloodthirst, right?
I feel like in these different eras of hip hop, like the SoundCloud era, the drill era, it's kind of like there's almost these power ups that are a good substitute for talent. So it's almost like, and no disrespect, but like back when let's call it the Smoke Perp era, it was kind of like just it was sort of like the hair dye and the face tattoos and the social media antics was like a good substitute for talent. Now it's kind of like having bodies and being known for really doing dirt on the streets is kind of like a substitute for talent. Not to say someone like King Von or Youngboy aren't talented. I think that's why they are really at the top of their field, because they're combining like a real street narrative with talent. But then you've still got artists like, let's say someone like Lil Uzi. Like, that's raw, undeniable talent. The guy makes incredible music. He ain't got bodies. He might have slapped Rich the Kid a couple times, but you know what I mean. He ain't really out here spinning blocks like that. But at the same time, it's like raw talent is always undeniable. And you've still got artists that have kind of come through in this era. I mean, even someone like Yeet is like, massively successful in his own fan base and hasn't got any bodies as far as I'm aware. But it's kind of like the talent and the originality really shines through. And I think what hip hop's really waiting for is somebody to come through with like a really original style that doesn't sound like all of the stuff that's out there. And I
Mm.
think people will end up kind of like following their lead, because right now it's like you can just like you can just make songs that sound like everything everyone else has done, but if you got bodies, or if you killed someone, or if you killed someone, you are going to pick up a lot of attention, and you're going to go very far. But at the same time, you're kind of living on borrowed time if that's the case, because realistically, I mean, look at the situation that happened to Von. There's been a lot of great rappers that have lost their lives,
Right, and I mean,
unfortunately.
Yeet, from what I could tell, big fan base, does big first week numbers comparatively for like other underground artists and stuff. It seems like he's cultivating a real fan base, and he's not necessarily like doing a bunch of weird gimmicky shit that would maybe put a time limit on his success. But at the same time, there is no Swamp Stories video about Yeet. There is no Trap Lore Ross documentary about Yeet. And you wonder how much that kind of hurts him, that there just isn't that much lore. Now, the lore doesn't necessarily have to be violent. And I realize right now I am talking to Trap Lore Ross, but it doesn't need to be entirely violent. But a lot of times, I think that a lot of these video essay channels are almost like bigger than a lot of rappers or a lot of hip hop outlets. So if you can be an artist that gets talked about on those platforms, then that might elongate your career pretty significantly. And if you don't, if your story is just kind of boring, then it's probably more likely in a day and age like this where there's so much hip hop media. A lot of times it feels like hip hop media is almost like bigger than hip hop at this point. There's just way more interesting shit to be said about what's going on with Academics, Vlad, No Jumper, et cetera, than there is about rappers sometimes. Now, granted, the rappers can do 100 million plays on a music video, and Vlad or No Jumper will never get to that. But in terms of just the ongoing day-to-day conversation, it sometimes feels like a rapper who is mostly just about the music is kind of at a disadvantage in that regard, even if you kind of remove the violence from it.
I think ironically, like somebody like Yeet is better off without a Trap Lore or a Swamp Stories video about him, because ultimately it's almost like if you can have success in spite of the, let's say criminal background of your story, you've ultimately built more of an organic following that's then not dependent on you getting into antics or you catching a case. A really good example of that was Pooh Shiesty. Like realistically, Back in Blood was a banger. He had a hit. That was a nationwide, worldwide hit song. But at the same time, people weren't really rocking with Pooh Shiesty if it wasn't for that Trap Geek video. They call him the Menace of South Memphis. And like realistically, that's the motion really started like around that time when it was more about like, yo, Pooh Shiesty, Back in Blood, he really stole a bunch of guns. And, ultimately he had to keep those antics up, and that was what stalled his career. Somebody like Yeet, who even Uzi, I've done a couple Uzi videos, but not those kind of videos. But like even someone like Yeet or Uzi, it's almost like they're not going to fall off as easily because they're not as dependent on the antics. And I will say, just in my own defense, it's almost like I know right now it's like the drill music stuff is the most popular, and I understand people are interested in the true crime aspect of the music, but at the same time, like I've always prided myself, even though some people don't like to talk about it, on being able to cover other types of stories. Like yes, the King Von thing was monumental, and it was my most popular project that I've done, and everyone loves talking about Von, but I did do a video that got over 1 million views on Eminem and Eminem and Kim's divorce, Kanye and Kim's divorce. I got videos about all different types of topics that aren't necessarily all about the violence. And I think, again, to pat myself on the back a little bit, I think that's why maybe like even for the hip hop pundits and the people that are doing the news, I think the people that can have like more of a broad base of things that they talk about, whether it's the Tory and Meg situation, Kanye and Kim's divorce, Kanye's mental breakdown, King Von killing a bunch of people. I think that like that versatility to be able to actually just tell compelling stories is like really important. Because again, just like the rappers, like if eventually, like I feel like this kill murder rap is going to kind of fall out of favor, and whatever comes through and replaces it is going to be the new thing everyone wants to talk about.
Because
And,
okay, Traplo
yeah.
Ross, put yourself like your peers, somebody like Sunny V2, something like Patrick CC seems like he's doing crazy numbers super consistently now. The video essay space is flooded, but it seems like there's certain people like Sunny or Patrick CC who just managed to like build up a reputation with their audience that everything that I do a story about is going to be interesting. You have to watch it, even if it sounds boring. The other day, I watched a Sunny V2 video about people who are on that, what was that, survival show? And it fucking triggered me because I remember the guy Bear Grylls. I remember back
Yeah.
in probably 2008 watching that show, and there was a scene where he picked up a giant pile of elephant poop and would squeeze it, and water would come out of the elephant poop, and that's how he was purporting to survive. And even as a relatively young man at that time, I might have been like 25 or 26, I remember thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there's got to be so much worse stuff that's going to get into your body from the elephant poop. Like, yes, you might get a couple grams of water, but you're consuming a whole lot of fecal matter at the same time. And if I were to accidentally consume fecal matter, probably the first thing I'm going to think is, oh shit, I got to drink some water. So I feel like that made no sense to me. I watched that documentary from Sunny V2. Boom, he exposes it. That never happened. Or it may have happened in the show, but a lot of stuff was faked in the show, and that doesn't actually work in real life. I can't believe that I never thought to Google it before this, but you just sort of build up trust with your audience over and over and over to the point where I feel like Patrick CC can make a video, nothing to do with hip hop, still get 1 million views, and it could be something that is just very general interest. But if it's got a good title and you have a lot of trust for the host, boom, you're watching it. Put yourself in comparison to them. Where is your mind stayed at? Because you've kind of carved out this niche for yourself as the guy who's down to take 9 months working on a video, and then when it finally comes out, it'll actually be worth it.
Yeah, I feel like the squeezing a giant turd and getting the juice out is quite a good metaphor for like the video essay scene on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people throwing a whole bunch of shit at the wall, and all the viewers and the YouTube algorithms squeezing that shit together, and those drops that come out, like that's a Pat CC, that's a Sunny V2, that's a me, even a Swamp Stories. There's a lot of crap on YouTube, and that's not just like bad videos or bad video makers, but it's like bad stories too. And I feel like the key really is in story selection. And like, I think Pat picks amazing stories. I think Sunny V2 picks amazing stories. And like for me, I feel like, I there was a period when I felt like I was falling off because I was really just picking stuff that like I was really into and that I knew there wasn't really an audience for. If you go and look at some of my least viewed videos, there's like some real random topics in there, and it's stuff that I'm super passionate about. You watch the video and you can tell that like, and it's no disrespect to these people. These people have big audiences, but it's like, I did a Young Gravy video like 3 years ago, and people kind of like, I ain't trying to hear about Young Gravy, but it's like, yo, I love Young Gravy's music, but it's like, it wasn't really like, it didn't really make a compelling story. It was really just, I wanted to spend a week listening to Young Gravy's music and writing about him. But I think that the thing that really stands out is like story selection. I think Pat CC has done a really good job as far as like, I think he stepped outside of the hip hop lane and kind of picked stories that were really broadly appealing in the sort of media landscape. And I think that he's like really hit a bullseye with that, and I really respect it. I think Sunny V2 is the same thing. Like I remember when he was first coming up, and he was like, he would kind of have a few swings and misses with the story selection. But like now it's almost like they're all broadly appealing. It's almost like the Mr. Beast approach to picking stories, in a sense that it's like, Mr. Beast doesn't drop a video unless it's a big idea a lot of people are going to be into. And that's the way that Sunny V2 seems to approach his topics. He's doing big stuff that easily 5-10 million people are going to be interested in. I think for me, I'm still like in this difficult space where it's kind of like I'm picking stories that like it's like I'm trying to find the right balance between picking a story that I know I'm passionate enough about to spend 2 or 3 months researching, and at the same time that I know these stories are going to get a couple million views just to sustain the business realistically. Like, not even I think I leave a lot of money on the table approaching things the way that I approach them, but I create a product that's completely different to anything out there. No one else is making 3-hour videos about King Von's bodies. Nobody's making 6-hour documentaries about Youngboy's alleged bodies and his career. So I've really tried to like carve out a specialist niche for myself, and I think maybe for me to like keep growing, I think I got to try and like I think I maybe got to try and like confine what I do to a little bit more, not short videos. Like I want to maybe do a few more short documentaries on my second channel, but like I think the 2.5 hour mark is the sweet spot. And I think that there's a lot of other topics. I mean, like I said earlier with the Malcolm X thing, maybe not after what happened today, but like there's a lot of things where I think to myself, like, you know what, I want to get to the point where I could step outside of hip hop and show people 2 hours on an interesting topic that maybe they might not have realized was really that interesting, and
Mm.
really try and like hit the bullseye on a Patrick CC flex with that. But like right now, like, people want to say, "Oh, you're a culture vulture and you're just piggybacking off hip hop culture." It's like, bro, saw a comment the other day and someone was like, "I bet Trap Lord Ross couldn't even name 5 Youngboy songs." It's like, bro, you have no idea. I am living, sleeping, eating, breathing Youngboy, pause, all day long, and just like I love this music, I love this culture, I love this space, and it is really difficult for me to see myself like doing a Sunny V2 type documentary, doing a 2 hour long documentary about something I don't really care about. Like, I'm obsessed with Youngboy, I'm obsessed with Von, I'm obsessed with Dirk. You know, I'm doing a UK story at the moment, and like it's coming in at hours long, and I'm just super interested in it and super like passionate about breaking down like this background and this history. But I think that anyway, to circle back to what you were saying, I think the best video essay channels are the people that pick like broadly appealing topics that they know millions of people are going to enjoy. And I think for me, what I've tried to do is kind of like pick the hip hop stories. King Von's a good example where it's kind of like before that video, there's a lot of people that watched it and were like, bro, I didn't know anything about King Von or even Chicago Drill, but like I'm into serial killers. So I checked out this video and now I'm obsessed. And it's kind of like my thing at the moment is really trying to take hip hop stories that are big in the hip hop niche and kind of normalize them so that anybody could tap in, watch them, learn about Youngboy from scratch, learn about the Baton Rouge music scene from zero, and then enjoy the music afterwards. But yeah, I probably, you know what I'm saying, I could probably get on a Sunny V2 thing someday and do a little bit more broadly appealing stuff.
Yeah, because he seems like he keeps himself to like the 10-minute thing, and like that's what's different though is that I don't really like. Obviously, there's a million YoungBoy 10-minute videos, you know, but to put all that information together is really like the value add that I think that you brought to the table with that. Now, you probably don't want every project you do to be a 6-hour monstrosity, and also you wonder if the stuff that you're putting in hour 5 is really getting seen by that large of a percentage of the people who watch it, which for me, I watched it in multiple sittings, which I assume will be true of almost everybody who's watching your content. You're just not going to really be able to get away with watching it all in one sitting unless you have like a really unbelievably powerful bladder. But for me, I don't know. Sometimes it's like maybe you should chop it up, but if you're gonna make it 2 parts, then you kind of got to have like a really good title for each part that doesn't make it so obvious that these are like, well, yeah, because the second part could have had a title that was something more like King Von and Young Boy, whereas the first part would be more like all this shit that happened basically in Baton Rouge. Those are kind of like very distinct storylines, and you probably would have been able to kind of chop the thing in half and probably have it be sort of like that, right?
Well, a lot of people have said to me, like, why don't you do the video in parts? And it's just like, yeah, I could do that. And I'd probably make more money doing that, to be honest with you. And I'd probably have a lot more sanity doing that. But like realistically for me, at least at the time, like I'm trying to pop out with a 6 hour video and blow everyone's mind. Like
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to do.
I like the
'Cause, like,
I like the ambition of just saying, "Hey, here it is. If you don't want to watch 6 hours, fuck off." I've been writing the history of No Jumper video, and I really, it pains me the extent to which I procrastinate on this because so much of the video is personal, and it's hard for me to just sit down. Like a lot of times when I sit down in front of the computer at the end of the day, I want to disassociate. I want to watch some video about some rapper, or I want to watch a video about like, you know, some stand-up comedian beef or something. I don't want to sit there and think about myself more because being on camera is so about yourself and you have to constantly be thinking about yourself. Even right now, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm sitting in this position. Do I look okay? Should I be sitting in a different way? Should I be talking differently? Do I sound smart right now, etc.? You know, but like I find it fucking challenging as shit to actually sit down on that. I actually don't think that there's anything in the last couple of years of my life that I've procrastinated like the way I've been procrastinating on writing this history of No Jumper video. But yeah, okay. Here's a question that I just really wanted to ask: is you're coming off of the hype of the King Von video. I feel like that video definitely made noise on a level that you had never reached before. And you know, you had conversations with me about this before. Like you one time asked me like, how do I become really big? You probably didn't word it like that, but you were like, you know, there's Ak, there's Vlad, there's No Jumper. How do I get myself to the point where I'm mentioned in that conversation was essentially what you were getting at. And I remember thinking about it and kind of saying like, well, you know, I've done like 1,500 interviews, but I feel like the thing that made me who I am is the fact that I interviewed X and that got 21 million views. And that just did more for my career than 100 or 200 or 300 regular ass interviews could ever do. That one that was just a knock out of the park thing. And I could have never known it, which is different than the King Von thing, where obviously like you probably at a certain point kind of had the idea of like, oh, this is actually worth putting this much time into. And I think it's actually like served that purpose where like the King Von documentary kind of took you and put you in a different category where like people just talk about you like you're the guy in hip hop who's going to do these crazy ass crime slash hip hop documentaries, the same way that 1090 Jake has officially exposed enough snitches that he's the snitch exposer guy. Even if he never does it again, people are still probably going to keep talking about him like that. So coming off the success of the King Von video, where was your headspace at, and what was your thought process about exactly what content you were going to take on from there?
Yeah, man, it was a crazy time. You know, I thought the Von video would do well. Even when I was uploading it, dude, I had my doubts. I was kind of thinking like, you know, Von's been gone for a while. No disrespect, but like people weren't talking about Von like they were talking about him when he was alive doing all of this stuff.
Right.
And there was a part of me that was like, if this could flop, and I was off the back of my Eminem video, which like didn't do that well. It kind of got shadow banned for certain content that was included in it. But so I was kind of feeling like, bruh, this is sort of like not my last swing, but like I was kind of like, damn man, this thing's got to go well. I never thought it would go this well because I'd done Von content before and it had done okay, it done decent, but it wasn't like my biggest thing.
What was the title on the previous Von video?
It was something like what was it? Man, I can't even remember.
Serial killer holds a certain weight.
Yeah, facts. Because I knew serial killer documentaries are super, you know, super sought after pieces of content in general. You know, I knew what I was doing with that title. I didn't know it would go to the level it did. I didn't know that Von's people would come at me that hard. I didn't know they'd be trying to shut the channel down. I didn't know that they'd be getting the video taken down, attacking the Patreon, all type of stuff.
Attacking the Patreon? How you do that?
Oh man, there's some stuff that they can do. You know, Chicago Scene 88 had a madness with Chicago guys fucking with his Patreon.
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It was fine in the end for me, but he had it worse. But anyway, I think that got resolved. But anyway, yeah, I guess to really answer your question, as far as like you know, the plan originally, and I wasn't expecting to do a 3.5 hour Von video. Like, I wanted to at the end of 2022 do a trilogy of videos. I wanted to do like biography, life stories on Von, Youngboy, and Dirk. Like, I wanted to do this 3 video. I wanted to do like because basically these at the time it was like these were the most fascinating artists in hip hop, and it was who everyone was talking about. I had a whole bunch of shit going behind the scenes where I lost my editor, and then I had a new editor, and then my editor snaked me, and just all sorts of bad stuff went down.
Right.
But like essentially the plan was I was just going to drop this trilogy, and you know, then it was kind of like the Von thing ended up taking months to produce. So when it finally came out, and then it was a huge thing. It was bigger than I ever thought. In my head, I was just going to drop like a Von video, a Youngboy video, a Dirk video, like 3, you know, hour and a half docs, and those 3 were going to kind of be like this legendary run. In the end, the Von thing just was such a huge thing. It almost like took me to a whole new level, but then also like made it really hard for me to take a next step. Then I started doing the Youngboy video, and to be honest, man, there was a lot of pressure, bro, to follow up the Von thing. You know, I had never done anything so big. It was ultimately an impossible task of like, how can I follow this thing up? There's no way that I can top what the Von thing did. So I really set out. I was like, you know what? I need to like accomplish something bigger in terms of like scope of the project. So I was like, let me do this Youngboy documentary and really try and like do the deepest dive into Youngboy I could possibly do. And, you know, just the more I looked into his career, like the more I found interesting stuff. And it was just kind of like, I'm just going to do everything. I'm going to do the definitive Youngboy docu series, really. Like, I know it's 6 hours. I really see it as like a Netflix mini series where people might watch it in 6-hour-long parts. But it was just like, I was trying to top that. I knew it wasn't going to top the Von thing, but I just wanted to top the idea. And I feel like I did that. I'm so proud of the Youngboy thing, man. Like, I've never seen anything that comprehensive in music.
No,
like,
yeah, and I needed a lot of that explanation as well, because I remember even like I remember meeting, I forget who I was interviewing, but whoever it was, their team started talking to me about Lit Yoshi. And I had just watched the documentary. This was a couple years ago. I had just watched some video on YouTube and I was like, oh yeah, that guy's fucking crazy. And they were like, what do you know? And I was like, I don't really remember or whatever. But like, I needed that refresher on exactly how all that shit played out because it was so like complicated because it's a little different with Chicago where so many people are well known. Whereas like even this thing that's been going on with like Psycho Bob's mom getting killed and all that kind of shit, when you actually start breaking down who all these different characters are in the story, a lot of the people that someone like him was beefing with have like an average of like 10,000 views per video, so it's a little bit harder to make the fans interested when your ops are so irrelevant. No offense, I hope those guys don't kill me for saying that, but it's like a little bit harder to get people tuned in. Whereas with Chicago, even if you don't know who the exact person is, well, you probably know the name of the hood that they're from, right? So if they're from THF or they're from 051 or whatever, at least you have like a reference point. You're like, oh, okay, that's where this guy, and this guy are from. So therefore, I kind of get who this guy is, even if I don't know anything about him. But man, yeah, like, did you bring anything new to the table in terms of a lot of the Baton Rouge talk, or was that kind of like mostly stuff that you were able to find in other smaller documentaries? Because you don't really talk to people, like you don't have conversations with people who aren't public about your content, right? Because that would kind of be like the next level of where you could take all this, right?
Yeah, this is the funny thing is that, like, I saw Academics kind of giving his take on the documentary. I really appreciate him reacting to it. And his take was kind of like, oh, the Youngboy thing didn't really bring anything new to the table. And really, like, I got to be real, like, my approach has never really been to expose secret info about the scene or like to try and hack into someone's info or even get some private dirt off somebody in the DMs. Like, my approach has always been to like cast the net out to everything publicly available and bring it all together, bring the lyrics in line with the social media post, in line with the news article. Like, that's kind of like the trifecta of trap law, kind of like proving a piece of information. It's the lit Yoshi and Seven Hardaway shooting up the ops on camera that's in the Baton Rouge news. It's them on social media in the car in the same outfit, like celebrating the shooting, and then it's 1 week later, Lit Yoshi's dropping a song where he's rapping exactly what he did. Like, I've never been the guy like 1090 Jake, and respect to him, who kind of like is digging up paperwork, talking to people directly, getting paperwork dropped off to him in person. And I could never do what he does in the same way. I don't think he could or would want to do what I do, because it's a completely different approach. And my thing really is just like, I know how to find public information that's maybe hidden or overlooked. And it's really a case of like, I know Youngboy, a lot of the Youngboy subreddit and stuff, people were like, oh, this trap law documentary sucked. Ain't nothing new. It's everything we already knew. And it's sort of like, I doubt you already knew all of this stuff together in order, in context. Like,
Also,
the
if
magic
you're
really happens.
yeah, if you care enough to be in the Youngboy Reddit, then you're probably not really the target market, since like, yeah, you as a super fan probably know all this stuff. Obviously, when you make a 6-hour documentary on YouTube, you're aiming to hit a wider audience.
I never forget, like, I feel like the moment things really changed for me is when I did my Jacksonville gang documentary. And before the King Von thing, that was the biggest thing I'd done. And it really surprised me because my mom hit me up and she was like, oh, I really enjoyed that Gangster Florida documentary you did. I watched all of it. I found it really interesting. And that was like the first time where I was like, damn, I put that together. I explained where Jacksonville is. I explained everything about the Jacksonville music scene, the Jacksonville police, and all this stuff. And I was like, I didn't really realize at the time, but I was like, damn, I made something that was completely accessible. And like, my mum likes true crime. And like, she tuned in and watched the whole 2 hours of that thing. She doesn't usually tune into my stuff. She doesn't care about hip hop. She doesn't care about 6ix9ine's beefs. But that was the moment when I realized, like, no, what I do, it's really about taking all of this hip hop drill lore and making it like accessible for the average person, for the average true crime fan or the average documentary watcher. And I feel like that's where my skill really is. If you're a Chiracologist and you know everything there is to know about Chirac, you probably know more than me. Like, you might not learn anything new from the documentary, but at the same time, it's going to be 2 hours where everything is going to be laid out in the simplest terms so that you can understand from start to finish. And that's where I see my talent as being, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Or even something like laying out the baby mamas. Like that's just something I would have never had the patience to actually figure out. I just knew he had a shitload of baby mamas. I'm not thinking about like exactly who they are and how they play into each other. Or I've read all these headlines about the baby mamas and how they interact over the years, but I never really got, fully focused in on exactly what it's about. So give me like how do you even begin on the young boy thing? Do you just start writing, or you just start compiling information and bringing it all together so that you can then start writing at a certain point? And also, how much help did you have on this? Because there is part of me that kind of felt like a bunch of the different sections were maybe written by different people, or is that just me being a little conspiracy minded?
It's a little from column A, a little from column B. So
Okay.
essentially, like I've got a full-time researcher, Miko, who is amazing. Shout out to Miko. He's sort of was like my right-hand man now when it comes to research. I had another guy, Josh, who shout out to him. He was helping me out for helping me out for part of the project. But ultimately, like what we do is essentially like we kind of go to work just trying to find like all of the most important pieces of information and then putting them into a documentary and putting them in order. So like it's really a case of like for me with Youngboy, it was a case of like working out, okay, what are the most interesting things and the important things we got to break down? And it was sort of like, okay, look, the beef with Von, it's partly about Von's relationship with Asian Doll and Youngboy's baby mama Jania. So it's kind of like, okay, we got to explain who Jania is. Really, we probably got to explain who all the different baby mamas that Youngboy has because they're all kind of intertwined. And it's essentially like the Jania thing. It's kind of like these baby mamas are a vulnerability for Youngboy, and other things. It was like, oh, he's got a baby with Floyd Mayweather's daughter. Like that's interesting. Let's make sure that we explore that and put that in there. And it just really is a case of like, obviously like yeah, the death of G Money, the death of his manager Big Dump, the fact that Lit Yoshi was just terrorizing Baton Rouge for years and never getting caught. And it was really just a case of like finding out information, laying it out step by step, putting it all in order. And I know it's a 6-hour documentary, and people are like, "Oh, you could have cut that down." There was a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the documentary. The beef with Jay the Young'un didn't make it into the documentary. There's a whole situation in Baton Rouge, the sort of like the Bleeders gang and the Vultures and all this stuff. That ultimately, in the end, I was just like, no, this is a documentary about NBA YoungBoy. This is a documentary about YoungBoy's career. It's a documentary about YoungBoy's allegations. It's there's supposed bodies that like weren't part of this documentary because I didn't think they mattered to the story that I was really trying to tell. Obviously, you got the beef with Von, the situation with Dirk, even his friendship with Quando, where it's kind of like I've got to actually explain like how he found Quando, how he signed Quando, and like how Dirk was trying to sign Youngboy and was trying to sign Quando and was calling out Quando as like one of his favorite artists. And then Youngboy snaps up Quando when Dirk's kind of like courting him. It's like these are all little tidbits of information that people might be like, yeah, we already knew that. But it's like when I put all of that into context, as far as like all of this shit led up to the King Von beef and then King Von dying and then Dirk and Youngboy are going back and forth. It's like it is very difficult and very complicated to make it so that somebody that doesn't know any of this stuff can get it. Like I got to explain who Quando is. I got to explain who Von is. I got to explain what Chicago drill music is. I had to do a quick whistle stop explanation of Dirk's career. There was a part in the doc where I kind of say like Dirk was really this like veteran of Chicago drill who kind of fell off for a minute, and Youngboy kind of surpassed Dirk in every way, and then Dirk kind of like let's be real, Dirk's career picked up when King Von came back around, and Von really put that gangster battery back into Dirk's back, and it was really that kind of energy in that era that Dirk really went to the next level. It's sometimes I didn't mention it in this documentary, but it's like it's easy to forget that like Dirk's real heyday was when he did that song with Drake, and that was like a couple months before Von died, and that was
Right.
peak King Von season, right? So it's kind of like all of this info, all of this context is like really hard for people to understand. So I lay it all out step by step. We're on, watching every single IG live Young Boy's ever done. He did a live with Dirk. Let's check that. Is there anything interesting in there? Reading all these Dirk interviews where Young Boy gets mentioned. And it's just like it's just so much content, but it's
I
it's
know.
me and another guy full time, and another guy was kind of helping out part time.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot to get through.
Because like unintended consequences of your documentary is that like I was never super tuned into Quando Rondo, so when I was watching your documentary and I see him like at his live show, and he's got the audience screaming neighborhood back at him and all this shit, and he's throwing up 5 million different gang signs and shit. I had never been so tuned in that I realized that he was going hard for neighborhood like that. And then I watched the documentary and I'm like, oh, okay. So this is why people thought that it was so funny when Big U called him out for hitting him up for protection or whatever back in the day. And then it even kind of like colors like the little Pab situation when you all of a sudden kind of understand more and more of like how these things are all sort of interconnected. And I mean, honestly, though, now I'm like a way bigger Quando Rondo fan than I was before I watched this documentary. So if people want to say that you don't like cause people to actually get music fans, I have to question that because I went and listened to the Youngboy and Quando album just to like, you know, and one thing that amazes me is how I can listen to the whole thing and barely catch up on any of the King Von disses because they rap really fast. They sort of like smush bars together and stuff. If it wasn't for your documentary, I would not have picked up on like 90% of the bars that are clearly aimed at Dirk and Vaughn in all that. But then that like is sending me back deeper into Apple Music and listening to all these other Quando songs, and I'm like, God damn it, I'm supposed to be an Oblachian. Why the fuck am I getting sucked down the Quando Rondo rabbit hole right now? But it did have that unintended effect on me.
Yeah, I actually did. I've written a Quando documentary as well that kind of like fills in the gaps and kind of goes back and looks at his history, like in Savannah, because you know Savannah's no joke, man. Savannah, Georgia's got a lot of serious street activity. You know, I've dug into like Lil Tim's past in the streets, and there's a lot of interesting stuff out there that has been massively overlooked.
And is
I
this
think
likely to
Quando,
come out?
yeah. That so the funny thing is, I wrote that in between the Von and the Youngboy doc, and I just had a whole situation with an editor that didn't deliver the video in the end. So that video's been on ice. So we're hoping to kind of get that one done. I'm hoping to drop that out next. But that's actually been done a while. I need to update it because a lot of stuff's happened. Like Tim's beat his case. He's dropped a new song. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's happened since that video was written. But I really like what you said because, like, in the course of doing that video, I really ripped apart like all of Quando's discography. And I think Quando is such a talented and overlooked artist. I think he is actually really one of the best people out. And I would say Quando's Recovery album was one of the best albums of the year. It was absolutely incredible. And that guy is truly blacklisted.
Yeah, and it also feels like maybe signing with Youngboy might have kind of like cast him in a weird light because Youngboy is so good that it's like it's hard for him to stand out when he's kind of doing a lot of the same things musically, and Youngboy is so good and so famous and so well known for it. It's kind of hard for Quando to stand on his own 2 feet when he's always going to be compared to him, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it says a lot about how loyal Quando has been to Youngboy. I mean, whether or not you believe that, you know, obviously the whole situation that happened with Von, it was connected to Youngboy. And you know, Quando caught the brunt of what was essentially what appeared to be a beating with Youngboy's name on it. Realistically, like Von was really gunning for Youngboy, trying to beef with the top dog, and was, you know, essentially what seemed like trying to beat up his artist. And then, you know, everything went left how it did, and you know, Tim started shooting, the cops started shooting, and it went how it went. But it was like that was ultimately like off the back of, you know, Youngboy being the top dog and Von kind of wanting to kind of, you know, fan the flames a little bit and try and make more of a name for himself. But like Quando has been ultimately like a soldier for NBA, you know, you could say in a lot of ways. And really, like, Quando and his career have suffered the most for a beef that really had like Youngboy's name on it.
I know, and it's so insane to me that Dirk apparently has the power to like blacklist somebody like Quando for something that, if you look at it objectively, it's really well. I mean, Quando Rondo did nothing wrong aside from, I guess, talking shit about Vaughn after the fact in the music. You can object to that, but I mean, it's not like he chose to pull the trigger for Lil Tim, and it's not like he chose to be getting punched in the face by Vaughn. It's kind of hard to like like even the 6ix9ine blackballing. I mean, it only makes sense in the sense of like people don't like 6ix9ine, but like, you know, we're blackballing people off of Apple Music playlists because they snitched. Like, that just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. You want to blackball Tory Lanez or R. Kelly? Okay, I think that makes sense, especially people who have been convicted of these crimes. But especially a crime where somebody, even the person who pulled the trigger, got off on self-defense. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, that just seems like really bizarre. But okay, so one of the other things that I wanted to say, oh yeah, so just to talk about this, it feels like the academics YouTube channel has kind of gone a little bit dark over the course of the past year or two. He's clearly kind of chosen like streaming over what was always his thing, which is his. I'm gonna call them like semi-scripted. When you talk about the videos that he's always like, probably the stuff that you originally liked him for and everything is like, I don't think they're scripted, but I think he gets a lot of the information together and is able to sort of like reference it all very quickly, as opposed to the streaming thing. Do you think that that kind of like opened up a window for a lot of people like 1090 Jake and Swamp Stories, et cetera, to sort of start covering that stuff? Because I was pushing the line when we were on call the other day. I was saying you should have never stopped doing War in Chirac. Now I understand why you stopped, but in retrospect, I think it seems to me like it would have been probably from a content perspective. I would have kept doing it if I were you. Now, I also think he probably would have never got a Spotify deal if he had kept doing that, if he had fully like leaned in on the bloodthirstiness. But it definitely opened the door for a lot of other people to do similar stuff. Like how do you look at that? And if you were academics, would you get back on the semi-scripted main channel videos as well?
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting point that you made. I watched the interview when you said to him, kind of like, why didn't you get a whole team of people and do the war in America and do the war in every state? You could do Jacksonville, you could do the Bronx, you could do all this stuff. And I kind of agreed with you. And I feel like I think that Axe sees himself as more of a mature creator. I think he feels like he's stepped up. I don't think
Yeah.
he'd want to take what he would see as a step down. But also, I feel like Ack did nothing wrong as far as like the hate that he gets from the war in Chirac. People never like he has made his defense, which I think is valid, where he says like it was a satire. I was trying to really poke fun at the ridiculousness that these guys were so brutal and so, like, as he would say, savage. As far as like, I was calling Lil Reese the Grim Reaper and all of this stuff, and it's like I feel like a lot of people that criticize him, like, they're not willing to accept that like he was satirizing it, and he was one of the first people that had even discovered this subculture. And to some now, someone like me exists with all of the knowledge and all of the I've seen all the war in Chirac, and I've seen the Louis Theroux documentaries on different gangs, and I'm trying to bring a very level-headed approach to when I talk about gang politics. None of that existed back when Ack was doing the war in Chirac. He was the first guy. He literally opened the door and walked into a crime scene and was like, "What the fuck?" And I think that actually that reflects in his content, and I don't think he deserves the hate that he got for it.
And
And
I
I
love
think
the
that
idea that like a person 10 years into their career will be judged by like the tone of the content that they first made when they entered into the game. That is what you should be judged on, not the stuff you're doing currently, but the tone, not even just the existence of the content. And you also realize that the vast majority of people that say something negative about the war at Chirac never even seen it in the first place, right? Like, it's just the vast majority of people will never go back and watch a video. They just hear the name and they're like, well, that sounds offensive. That sounds like something that somebody should not be doing. They're kind of offended by the notion of it. And yeah, it's to me seems like the worst, most bad faith reason to invalidate his content. And I don't know, when I see just like how copied it is, sometimes I'm like, damn, dude, like you could have definitely kept churning those videos out if you had maybe like got a little bit of a team in place to do it. But also, it probably would have held him back from a lot of other things as well, you know.
I said to him when I met him for off the record, when we linked up in Miami, like I said to him, I pitched this idea to him that I might have to just do on my own because he didn't like it. But I said to him, like, bro, have you ever thought of going back and retelling the war in Chirac in more of a level-headed tone? Like he could take the war in Chirac to someone like Netflix and say, let's do a 6-part, 10-part miniseries where we actually go back and retell those stories with the hindsight, with the with the tone that now we know everything. Now we've had 10 years to digest and realize this gang war going on in Chicago is really no joke. And like, go and meet Tuka's mom, or go and meet Lil Reese and talk to him about like the being the Grim Reaper and like what life really was like going through that. Like, I've always felt like, why not go back and with a big budget and rewrite history and kind of set the record straight on War in Chirac. But I don't think again, I don't think he wants to go backwards with his career. And he's a real kind of pioneer in this space. So, I kind of feel like I can't really question his decisions. But as a fan of the war in Chirac, I would have loved to have seen him kind of like remake it, do the sequel and do it in a way that kind of sets things straight.
Right, but like when okay, so that's kind of part of what I was thinking though, is that I think Ack has like a standard for how important a story needs to be in order for him to cover it, right? And it seems like he kind of has a hard time finding stories that seem interesting enough to warrant like a 8 to 10 minute video on his main channel going through the details of it. And I don't blame him because the difference between his channel now and 5 years ago is that 5 years ago there was just a lot that needed to be decoded and explained, and nowadays it feels like you're just so used to seeing like a Daily Loud post or a Instagram post that will have like a short caption and basically summarize the entire news story to such an extent that you don't really feel like you need to go watch a YouTube video about this. And you kind of see it in the views too, where I think he did a video about Nicki and Cardi's husbands, Offset being one of them, Big Zoo being the other, going at it. And it's like, that's a pretty big story. Like these are two of the biggest rappers and their husbands are beefing. That's a pretty big story. I think it did like 95K when I looked on his channel, which to me maybe is like a sign that people have grown a little bit like fatigued of the up to the minute hip hop news stories. And like, we see it too, where it could be the most interesting story in the world and we could cut a clip from it. And if it comes out like 2 days after the incident in question, unless you have the kind of channel like yours where people are just like very certain that you're going to be bringing new information to the table. And like Ack has the reputation of bringing correct and well-researched information. But I feel like a lot of times people just don't feel the need to click on a 10-minute video when they feel like they got all that they needed from TikTok or Instagram. So it's kind of like a weird new media space that we live in, and it's kind of shocking how astute the fans are and how capable they are of making decisions about what they want to watch and what to avoid, because there's just so much content out there that it's very the allure of not watching something is pretty strong at this point as well.
I think academics has grown a lot over the years as a creator, though, because it's like the thing is, back when he was doing the 10-minute videos originally, early, when he was doing like the Meek and Drake beef and shit like that, he was head honcho. Nobody else was doing it. He was sort of ahead of the curve, really, as far as doing like hip hop media reporting. Whereas now, Nicki's husband and what was it, Offset, get into a beef, and a million people have made a million 10-minute videos on it within 5 minutes. And it's just kind of like everybody's doing it. So Flacco will have a video about it. You guys will have a reaction to it. And, academics is sort of like just shouting into the noise. But he ultimately like created that scene. All of the people making those videos are basically his sons at this point. And ultimately, the way Ack does things now is it's kind of like, yes, you could spend a couple of hours putting together a little 10-minute video and drop it. But the way Ack operates now is he's less like a TV show and he's more like the 24-hour Fox News for hip hop. Because he'll be on stream drinking Henny and reacting to the shit as it happens and kind of, do an hour-long clip that'll be live and will be out before anyone else has even had a chance to react to it. And, realistically, and it's no disrespect to Ack, because doing live stuff is different to doing a crafted 10-minute video that has all the info. Like, Ack will be on live sort of being like, oh, where's the info? Scrolling through, trying to find stuff, but delivering it first. Whereas it's like, that might be an hour-long clip, and a lot of it might be him kind of like trying to find the information rather than actually delivering it. But I feel like he's probably doing better financially and relevancy-wise by doing his sort of like live stream approach to things, because that's where things are going.
It's weird because it's like, from my perspective, I have kind of been driven in the direction of building a business and monetizing as well as possible. So like a lot of the interviews that we do, we're going to chop it up and we're going to put out the clips first, because that's realistically the way to make the most money off of a piece of content, which you see Say Cheese do the same thing and Vlad do the same thing, etc. If you don't have like some big name sponsor on your video, that's pretty much the best way that you could go about making as much money from it as possible. Whereas when I look at what Ack does, if he sits on stream for 6 hours, it's like YouTube streaming rates are garbage. You're going to make, very, very low amounts, like couple $100 from being on stream for a few hours. And then you cut up all the clips, but you want to post the clips right away, so you don't have time to wait for them to get reviewed. So sometimes I look at that and I'm like, it's the best way to engage an audience, both in real time and after the fact, in terms of making a lot of clips. But at the same time, like, if that was my day to day, I don't think that I would be able to really like pay a staff in the way that I do now, because that's just not really like leaning in the direction of like optimizing for money. But then at the same time, like it looks fun. And a lot of times I think about it like, fuck, if I'm gonna get up in the morning and watch YouTube videos and read the news and like check out Twitter and get caught up on everything that's going on news wise, why don't I just do a daily stream where I just post up and kind of do it? I don't know though. Sometimes it just doesn't, like I overbook myself with interviews so much that I can't really like be that guy on a day-to-day basis, which kind of bothers me because there's a part of me, like when I see him reacting to an interview clip that I did and like the interview itself got like 50K and then he reacts to a clip from it and it gets 150K, there's definitely a moment where I'm like, like what am I doing with my life? Like, is this a good use of my time, or did I go in the wrong direction? Because it feels like the reacting is what makes a lot of content hit. Sometimes I feel like I should do an interview and drop a reaction video to my own content the same day on another channel or something.
There's something weird going on at the moment, man, with this reaction content, because it's like I'm kind of like you, like I'm trying to build a staff. I'm trying to get to the point where I can drop a full documentary every month, and that I don't need to be working 24/7 to make that happen.
Right.
But at the same time, like the way Axe got things set up is like he's the face of everything, he's central to everything, he's the man, and nothing happens without it going through him. But at the same time, like you got to be on and ready to roll 24/7, and like that's not really the life I'm trying to live. So it's tricky, and it's like there's always going to be like 100,000 people that are going to tune in to hear Ack react to everything. And I'm one of those people, like a lot of the times it is kind of like some shit happens and it's like, you know what? I ain't even going to watch the main video. I just want to hear what Ack has to say about it. Because Ack is like the filter to a lot of content that is out there in the hip hop space. And it's kind of like, I want to see it through the lens of Ack and the lens of like I'm not going to watch it and then watch it again on his stream and watch him react to it. But that does make me think like there is something a little bit crazy going on with the whole like fair use thing on YouTube, because obviously like fair use is very important, especially when it comes to making documentaries and doing analysis and critiquing things that have happened. But like there was that big beef a little while ago, I don't know if you followed it, of like XQC and Destiny kind of like beefing over what fair use is. And you got a guy like XQC who he's reacted to some of my stuff before. He'll literally get up out the chair and just let the video that he's reacting to run and then just keep all of the revenue. So it's a little bit like, I don't know whether there's and I'm not coming to act, but it's just kind of like there is something a bit strange where it's almost like people are kind of harvesting other people's content for their own uses, and then it's kind of becoming bigger than the original content.
No, because
so like,
I clicked on a video I clicked on a video on Axe channel and it said it was like him reacting to the Trapper Ross documentary, and I watched like the first 20 minutes of it while I was doing cardio the other day, and the motherfucker probably said about 6 words throughout the first 20 minutes of the video, and I was just like, okay, never mind. But on the other hand, a lot of times I find myself saving time where if there's some viral fresh and fit moment or something on the whatever channel, or if that fucking weirdo Pearl, who I'm currently embroiled in beef with, if Pearl goes on some news channel and gets in an argument with the host or whatever, and if I see that Destiny reacted to it, I'm so much more likely to click on that, because it's then like, not only am I getting the content of watching this freakish thing take place, but I could also, you know, somebody that I really trust from a more political perspective, I would kind of put Destiny in the academics category. Obviously academics minus the bisexuality as far as we know, but you know, I would kind of like go in that direction, because then I get to basically kill 2 birds at one time with 1 stone even, and that's kind of appealing. But then when I was watching that academics react to your thing, I was like, you know, if I'm Trapper or Ross, I maybe don't care for this so much. Like maybe you don't need to watch my whole documentary on stream. Like, and there were times where I maybe felt like that, where he was kind of watching like No Jumper office drama and reacting to it on stream, but it would usually be like he's watching a 5-minute clip, so that didn't really like bother me too much. And don't you get flagged watching this shit on YouTube? Because that's been my memory, is that when I would watch like full YouTube videos on stream, that like that's one reason why I like Twitch. I hate everything else about Twitch, but when I'm on there playing poker or whatever, I could just watch, you know, a 1090 Jake video and just not have to worry about it, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I love Ack, and Ack is a pioneer in this space. But sometimes it definitely hurts when you just feel like it's almost like I see him react and I'm like, bro, I wish you would say more. Like I want to hear more of what you have to say about the doc. Not that I begrudge him posting it on his channel and kind of like, you know, reacting to long segments of it without saying anything. But it's like, even just as a fan, I'm like, man, I wish he had more to say about it. But like, I remember he did a reaction to like my video on like, it was like the dark curse on Lil Durk. and like he was playing poker for basically the whole video. He was like half watching it and shit, and I was kind of like, man, come on. And then he claimed my original video with his reaction, and I was like, bro, not even are you you're even playing poker, you didn't even watch my video, and then you're taking the revenue from the original video. This is crazy. But to be fair, he did fix that, and I got my money back in the end. But like,
hey, but shout out to Failtown USA, because he might have figured this out for me. He said if you aren't running ads in your live streams, then you don't have to worry about the copyright claims. He makes his money off of donations and streaming sites, which is interesting. So maybe if you don't monetize the live stream, then you don't have to worry about getting flagged. I don't know how much sense that makes, but that could be the truth.
Yeah, they're just going to take our content and just fly it out for free without monetization.
With nobody
And,
gets to monetize it, right? Yeah.
Nobody get that's like straight up piracy, bro. That's like I don't know, but that's like torrenting, live leak type shit. But anyway, no, it's all good. Like I think the ecosystem is definitely like self-fulfilling, and getting on a Axe stream or a Destiny stream, I feel like it does help. I mean, like you were saying a minute ago, like even talking about like Pearl the Grifter, like it probably helps everybody getting posted on all these different pages. Realistically, I'm not really going over to Rumble to watch Sneeko say some crazy shit, but like, I'll check out Destiny, kind of like ripping into him about it, and take it that route. And
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying, that probably don't help the original uploader, but at the same time, like it keeps the relevancy up.
Yeah, and in that case, like when it's somebody whose content I support, I feel kind of bad about them having people basically like freeboot their content on a streaming platform. But when it comes to somebody I don't really care for, then it seems like an easy decision. Like I would obviously never watch this in my entire life otherwise. But the allure of reacting is so crazy, because a lot of times when you scroll through TikTok, you'll see like a viral clip playing and it'll have somebody else's face watching it and reacting to it. And sometimes the reaction will be like almost nothing. But this helps people to perceive this content. Like they wouldn't necessarily really want to watch it that much if they didn't get to see some guy's head in the corner nodding along. And that is kind of troubling that that's how people's brains work. But I mean, this is the same ecosystem where, one time I was talking to Destiny and I go to TikTok and first thing that pops up was a Destiny fan page with over 1 million followers. And I showed him it. I'm like, oh, you seen this? He's like, no, I've never seen it before. So I was like, what a crazy problem that must be to have not even know about this. But every single clip had the thing going on where they call them stim videos. This is me, I'm a millennial, I know terms now. Stim videos where it'll have like Crash Bandicoot or some fucking video game that I've never heard of, and then it'll have the Destiny clip on top of it, because if it was just Destiny's face, a little boring. You stick some video game footage in there. And ironically, Destiny is also playing video games to keep himself entertained while he's doing much of this content. I don't think that they necessarily want to put like, what's it called? Factorio? Actually, I should probably try that, see if I like it. But yeah, just the idea that people need reactions. And I see that with this cocksucker Jamari. I'll do an interview and then he'll make a video about it and get 500,000 views, whereas my interview got 50,000 views. And I'm just like, God damn, this dude just like provided a synopsis and it was this much more valuable to the audience that 10 times as many people wanted to watch it. I don't know.
Well, while we're on this topic, man, I got to hit you with a difficult question, but I just got to ask: how does it feel for you to have been the subject of several kind of like hit piece, kind of YouTube documentaries? Like, obviously, you've kind of been on the receiving end of some of that shit recently. Like, how does that feel when you see your face on a thumbnail of a hit piece doc of the type of thing you might really enjoy and savor watching on someone else? You know what I mean?
It's weird because mostly I won't watch it, so I don't really know what is in them. I've had the experience of sometimes like seeing a video about myself has a horrible title that makes me sound like the worst person on earth, and then I'll click it and watch it and realize that the person who made the video actually isn't really that against me or doesn't really buy into some of the allegations against me, but they also know that the way to get views on this video is to make the title as provocative as possible. So that's kind of interesting. And sometimes I'll be like, there's been a time or two where I was like, damn, that guy hates me. And then I finally get around to watching the video and I'm like, oh, he doesn't hate me. But the title and the thumbnail certainly would lead people in that direction. I don't know. I mean, I try not to think about it too much because, I mean, one of the weird things about it is that somebody can make a video about you. It could get 1 million views. And then you'll never meet someone ever who has anything to say about it or says anything about it, who has seen it. And it's like, well, I know at least 1 million people have seen this, but somehow I've never interacted with any of them. I mean, obviously, like, some people around me probably have seen it. They're too polite to mention it or whatever. But I mean, I like it when, even if the opinion of me is kind of negative, it's whatever, as long as it seems honest. But a lot of times it doesn't seem honest, or a lot of times like you'll be watching a whole video about you, and I remember I was watching a video and they just said like, oh, so this guy Lush, he was like the biggest star on No Jumper, and I'm like you put together this whole video and then you're just gonna say that Lush was the biggest star on the platform. Like the whole video seemed pretty good, and then you just kind of like miss this one detail where it's like, okay, Lush was like reasonably popular, but you can't put him in the most popular category. What the fuck are you talking about? And so I don't know, but it's just like low hanging fruit shit too, where like people, they just tend to go with the easy narrative or the easy synopsis of what's going on, and that the laziness is what kind of gets to me sometimes, because I feel like when I have an argument against somebody on camera that I'm willing to bring on camera, that typically I will go out of my way to try to debunk it myself or to try to figure out what the counterpoint is, etc. And it's kind of weird when people don't do the same for you, although it doesn't surprise me even slightly, because I've been on the internet too long to think that people are gonna sort of owe you that level of introspection that you might be willing to give them.
Yeah, man, it's interesting to kind of like see things go that way. But like, do you feel like with everything that's happened, do you feel like there came a point where you begun to like kind of like use the Reddit to your advantage, or like, there was a period of time when it was almost like people started to be like, oh, Adam has sort of become the mastermind of playing these little kind of public opinions. There's that classic illustration that went around of like you dropping all the old No Jumper hosts. Like,
Right.
I'm done playing. I'm done. I need some new toys or something. Like, was there a moment? I mean, a lot of people have been enjoying your big 22 moments on the Stairmaster with the creatine hit, and you know what I mean. When was the moment that came when you were like, you know what? I'm gonna put my foot on some people's necks, and I'm gonna kind of like bring some of that Reddit energy to the table, bro. Because I think a lot of people really enjoyed when that happened.
I guess it's just the point where you realize you don't really got anything to be afraid of. That like people are gonna talk tough. They're not gonna do anything. You don't got nothing to worry about. You could just do whatever. You can make whatever kind of content. And I mean, really, the moment that made the ops, quote unquote, 63rd stop talking about me is because I basically was just willing to say, I don't care if you're tough. Like so many of these arguments come back to like, I'm tough. And I'm just like, I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me that you're tough. And if you want to keep saying that shit, you're gonna have to prove it. So whatever. Like I don't care. It's just like I'm not really worried about it like that. Realistically, if you did something to me, I'm gonna handle it how I'm gonna handle it. Probably also gonna handle it in a court of law, or at least with a sternly worded phone call to the police department. I'm not scared of playing those games either as a law-abiding citizen, whatever. So it's like, I don't know. It's just like when you call somebody's bluff and then they just immediately stop talking about you for a period of a couple months, that kind of says everything, right? So I'm trying to leave that whole narrative in the past a little bit, but I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what it came down to, was just me making it clear that I didn't give a fuck and I wasn't worried about it. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, like, and honestly, like the whole Jason Love Lena thing, that kind of like that kind of like increased the amount of hate that I was getting to such an extent that it made me realize that I really didn't care about any of it. Like none of this really affects me. None of this really like involves itself with my everyday life. I could be having a great day making content at No Jumper and, get home at 5 and spend 2 hours with my kid before bed, and then, go and work out or play poker or do whatever, like in my big house that I get to live in because I've been so successful on content side of things or whatever. And then you go to Twitter and you got like 20,000 notifications of people shitting on you. And it's just kind of like, oh, like, whatever. Like you don't have to care. At a certain point, the Tyler the Creator cyberbullying tweet comes to mind where it's like you just walk away from the computer. Or like in my case, like I read a lot of it and I just don't really care that much. Like it just doesn't really matter. I feel like my channel is successful. People love my interviews still. It feels like people have really kind of warmed up to a lot of the hosts. They enjoy seeing me and Sharp and Brick and Whack. The Whack thing has been going crazy. People are really tripping out about that. So, I mean, I don't know. I've just been like, quote unquote, famous or like, well known on the internet for long enough that at a certain point, it's just what other people say about you is really none of your business. And I've always heard that. And it just keeps making more and more sense to me as the years go by. And the more and more high profile you get, the more and more you can imagine yourself as like a Kim Kardashian, where she gets so much hate she could never begin to even sort of deal with any of it, right? Or to like really care about any of it because it's just so pervasive. I think that's really like, that's reaching Zen as an influencer, is to have so much hate that you really can't pay attention to any of it. That's what we're all kind of aiming for, I think.
Yeah, man, it's kind of, I don't know, like it was really inspiring to really see you, they really tried to count you out. Like not necessarily they, but just like everybody. There's been a couple moments where people have been like, "Ah, it's over." But bro, like you come back stronger than ever every time. You've never been more relevant, Big 22 is kind of like just unkillable, bro. You're like the Terminator out here.
Yeah, I mean, it helps to have weak ass ops. It helps to have ops who left without a plan and then didn't even execute the plan that they thought that they had. So that's helpful. If somebody were to leave and start Tesla, then obviously that's going to be kind of rough. It's got to be rough to be Dame Dash, where like your boy that you had a business with leaves and he takes over the world and becomes like a crazy billionaire and marries the number one pop star in the world. I don't really feel
Hey,
like I'm in that position.
Lush might still do it, man.
If I had to pick one, I believe in Lush. Let me ask you this. What was it about Lit Yoshi that made you want to really condemn him as the scum of the earth? It felt like you had a bit more venom for him than you maybe even had for somebody like Vaughn.
Yeah, I did kind of feel like I went at him a little hard. I think it was shooting at the car with like women and kids in it. I think that really got me. Like, I think you see, what's interesting? You cover a lot of these gangster stories, and I think that you come across like occasionally you really catch those like hood morals. Like, there's a classic, not classic, but there's a good G Herbo lyric that I really like recently, where he says something like, "We only spare in them if we see a car seat." And it's kind of like
Wow.
that's that real gangster ethics of like no women, no kids. Whereas what I'm saying, you got someone like J Man. He's women are the first thing you're grabbing for when the ops start busting. But like I think there was just something that kind of really kind of messed with me when it came to like they said that he kind of like spun and shot up an ops car with like kids in the car. And you know what I mean, that kind of made me feel like it was that, and then plus the fact that he somehow managed to just be out on bail for all these shootings riding jet skis in Miami. And then there was that clip of him where he was like, I just need to go to the judge, get back to get the icing on the cake and get off probation. And then they basically were just like, hell no, like no more jet skis. You need to calm down. And, ultimately, like, I did feel maybe I went a little too hard on him because I think it's good to stay a bit more impartial. But like, I did just feel like Lit Yoshi was really out here like causing chaos. And then when you tie it back to the fact he was never formally convicted of it, but the police did officially say that he was connected to the shooting at the Trump Hotel where a man lost his life and a child was grazed. And whether or not it was Youngboy's crew or Yoshi's crew firing the exact shot that killed the innocent man working at the rental car shop, Mohammed Jaradi, or I think it was a 5-year-old child that got grazed by a bullet. I mean, yourself as a father, the people that started firing are really responsible in that situation. And that, I mean, even the fact for a child to have been grazed, that's you're talking that was very close to a kid being killed in that situation. And I think those facts, I mean, you got, Yoshi riding around with an AK, like in the time leading up to that shootout in Miami, that just really made me feel like he really didn't have a regard for human life in the way that, say, a G Herbo seemingly does.
Yeah, man. When I was talking to Mama Duck the other day, she made it clear that she feels like the taboo about killing women and children is at an all-time low. And I feel like to a lot of like street dudes, if you were to take a hard stance against shooting at somebody when their kid is there, they would feel like they are now at a massive disadvantage over their more heartless ops. So it's like, I mean, like all the street shit is just a race to the bottom, Because as soon as one side starts thinking, like, what if chemical weapons came to Chirac? You could imagine that the hood that thought up those first, that dropped a nuclear bomb on their op block, they win, right? If you could wipe out the whole block at once, then boom, you win. It's a miracle they haven't invented that. And you see that in Mexico too, with all the kidnapping and shit. It's like, God, I'm so thankful that even in Southern California, there's very, very little kidnapping going on. Kidnapping, like, for ransom is what I'm kind of specifically referring to. But you're just kind of like, geez, thank God people aren't that broke or that desperate. Because as soon as it becomes such a dire circumstance that started to seem reasonable, I mean, and you see it in LA. You see it where, like, as soon as the PvP money went away, all of a sudden you got people doing like way more robberies where they follow people home and rob them in the driveways of their house and stuff like that. That seems like way more savage than 10 years before that. YG was putting out records where he's talking about flocking. Now, flocking, obviously not like a victimless crime or anything, but at least like a lot of the guys who are flocking, they don't even have guns on them. The whole idea is to get in and out of the person's house with whatever their possessions are without getting caught. I mean, that seems like a pretty victimless crime in comparison to like, shoving a gun in somebody's face in their front yard. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like the worst shit gets. Like, we're clearly not at the point where we've seen the worst things that American criminals have to offer. Like, it will get worse.
Man, if one of the Oblockians sets off a dirty bomb in 63rd, you know what I'm saying? Well, they might just top Von.
Shit,
But,
man.
I don't know
It
if I
could
see it.
happen. God.
I mean, people are getting, there's still a lot of people coming out that are, into very serious business. I talk about the J-Main thing. You interviewed Tay Savage, right?
Yep. A couple times now, actually.
A lot of tough dudes out here that are just kind of, really, really pushing the tough, do anything to your ops type narrative. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a race of who can be the most savage on the mic. Whether or not people are doing these things for real, who knows? But you know what I'm saying? We had, was it Rondo number 9 had an RPG in the hood. So
But that was fake, right?
you know what I'm saying? This one was fake. Next one, you might get a little ammo, get a little loot crate delivered and shit, man. They could be setting off the RPGs.
I mean, if you want to know some good lore, go back to the video where I met 6ix9ine was called "Oh What a Night." It was just a vlog that I did where I met him, had no idea who he was, and I was talking to his friend, and his friend says something in the vlog about having a rocket launcher, and the cops, according to him, I guess it's possible that he was lying about this, but according to the cops, the next day the cops showed up at his house looking for the rocket launcher. And that blew my fucking mind at the time, because I'm coming from California at that time, and I'm thinking, like, you're telling me that the cops figured out from my vlogs that the New York City hip hop police department is paying close enough attention that they figured out that you mentioned a rocket launcher in, like, that just blew my mind. But I mean, that's a police department who's doing their fucking job right there. God.
Didn't like Zilla Kami or something have the RPG in the music video? And that
It might have been, but it was, so there was this dude Slosher, and he was like, there was like a really famous photo of 6ix9ine holding hands with like a heavy set black dude in the airport or something, and that was him, and he was the one who said that he had. And he's the only reason why I met 6ix9ine early on in his career in general, because, and I've said this too many times on the podcast, but he basically like had a photo of himself fingering a woman in a hot tub, both like his whole hand in her, and he's surrounded by pints of lean in the hot tub. Anybody who knows anything about lean knows that these are not real pints of lean, but he, like, I think I saw it and I posted it on Twitter because I thought it was such a crazy image, and then he sent me a tote bag with that image on it, and it was basically on the strength of that I ended up hanging out with him in New York in 2017, and that's how I met 6ix9ine, and that's why we ended up doing the interview, even though I very much did that interview like begrudgingly, because he was just kind of like a thirsty random ass kid for a long time until the music started hitting. Okay, let me see if I have anything else here. What about Asian Doll? How much culpability you think that she deserves in this whole storyline? Because if she was really giving NBA Youngboy that NBA Young top, then I feel like that kind of like explains a lot more of the animosity in a way that we didn't really get a window into previously.
This was a beef. This was a female-led beef, man. Like that's the way it seems. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people seem to want to push this narrative that like, oh, they didn't fight. They weren't fighting over a chick. Like they were. That seems to be the case. Like Von was taking the pictures with Jania, Youngboy's baby mom. That was a big part of it. That was like a big inciting incident. And then Asian was messing with Youngboy seemingly to get back at him, and all that stuff cascaded from there.
And talk to Remo, because Remo talked to somebody the other day who told us about an additional female who was a big part of that whole beef, not somebody who's even known.
Damn, that's crazy. This is the thing, though, man. It's like, as the great British rapper Dave says, a lot of people will die for Nyash. And you know what I'm saying? That's could arguably be what happened here. But bro, the idea that women are kind of involving themselves in these gangster feuds, maybe they don't even realize. I mean, look, Asian Doll, she went at me on Twitter as well, but like she was on Twitter talking about I only fuck guys that have got 3 bodies. I got 3 body minimum if you want to mess with me. And like I like killers and all this stuff. You know, she was messing around with like top 5 as well and all kinds of stuff. But like bro, like that's the energy you're putting out, bro. You're running around like pushing this idea that like you wanna sleep with killers and murderers, and like then you're gonna act like mortified when the murdering starts happening. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think I also want to say like I can't imagine what she went through. You know, Von was her boyfriend. They did seem like they were very much like in love from their posts, and I think it does seem like it was a serious relationship. I don't think it was a cap relationship for social media. And so, you know, I do have a lot of sympathy for Asian Doll. I'm sure she really went through it when Von passed. You know, whether or not you believe that she played a role in it, you know, the whole thing was messy as hell. And you know what I mean? That must have created a lot of trauma for her. So, you know, I do sympathize.
I hope she would be a little bit more careful with her words, given everything that she's been through. Saying I only like killers. I mean, that's kind of played out at this point because we've like heard so many girls go on podcasts and talk about how they only like drug dealers or they only like street dudes or whatever. And it's like, you know, that might sound cute, but if you're saying this in a venue where people are going to try to get you to actually make sense, it's pretty tough to justify saying that you would rather date a guy who makes $200,000 a year because he's a drug dealer or a criminal versus a guy who makes $100,000 a year and he's a regular guy. Me as a 40-year-old man, 39, almost 40, pretty fucking obvious that you should go with the guy with the safe, normal career, especially if you don't want to get involved in this, because you will snitch on them because they will make it so that you really have no choice but to snitch on them, especially if you want to continue on with your normal life. But yeah, I don't know, man. That was a fucking mind blowing plot twist. I guess I just didn't realize that Youngboy had apparently had Asian Doll, which I really, if I do get a chance to ask him any questions, that should probably be on the tip of my tongue. Is what's going on with Asian Doll?
Bro, there's so many questions, man. I feel like it's a blessing that you managed to get 6 hours of revision drop just around the time that you know what I'm saying you gotta try and land the interview, man. I don't know how possible it is, but that'd be fire.
I'm in contact with multiple people on his team, just trying to make something happen. Let's have a conversation that'll probably make him less likely to ever sit down with me. Me and Whack 100 had a bit of an argument on the podcast the other day because I referred to 4K Trey as a gang. Is that fair?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that like you know if you listen to the song Slime Mentality, as you yourself said, you know it's pretty
My
clear
mama
that you
slime,
know
my daddy
listen,
slime.
Mama Slam, everybody Slam. Yeah, look, that like I don't know. Listen, he as Quando Rondo said, you know what I'm saying, he'll kick a girl out for asking what 4K Trey even means. So
Right.
we're not supposed to know what it means. It may or may not be a gang. And I think this is just something I really want to get clear. Although I had people in my DMs saying they were going to literally kill me and stop me from uploading the Youngboy documentary for what they said was police ass shit. If you actually watch the documentary and you actually listen to what I have to say, I basically give Youngboy a pass for everything. You can't say that I say anything in that documentary that really points the finger at him directly and could get him indicted or anything like that. Because in reality, if he is the kingpin truly personally responsible for all those murders, he's not left a trace. There's like you said to Whack, you know, there's no denying that the guy has left a trail of death and destruction over the course of his career. But as I try and give in the context of the film, he comes from nothing but death and destruction. He comes from a dark, dirty, messed up place where, you know, human life is sadly not valued. Robberies, burglaries, murders was just a commonplace thing where he's from. So, you know, it's hard to really say like he really did all that like Von did, but at the same time, there's also a possibility that Youngboy is responsible for all of this stuff behind the scenes and he's covered his tracks. And I do think it's possible that we might never know. But then again, academics seem to say that he was sitting on a Youngboy interview where he confessed to all the crimes. So you know what I'm saying? That's what Ack said.
Man, if I was Zach, I would take the hard drive and bury it in the backyard just in case anybody ever tries to come through and get that. Because that's one thing, if I got a chance to sit down with Youngboy, that I would definitely ask him is like, what was on that academics interview? There's no way he actually was like on a FaceTime call and really admitted like actually admitted to shit. I don't know, because like why would he ever do that? Like why would he think that he could trust Ack with that information, even though he apparently could? Or why would it's like but that does sound like one of the greatest blueprints ever. Like to understanding him is if you actually had that, if that call really was that egregious.
There's a part of me, and obviously I love Ack, but there's a part of me that feels like maybe Ack's capping, because it seemed like maybe he just on a spur of the moment was like, oh, I'm just going to say that in a reaction to the documentary, because like, bruh, if you really got Youngboy confessing to crimes, bro, the feds might turn up at Ack's mansion and like subpoena those tapes, bro. Like, you got to be careful, man.
Yeah, and that would be very, very bad for Ack's future in hip hop media, even if he like wasn't 100% responsible for them coming and finding that stuff. Like just him being involved in it, like oh my god, he would be like in a Gunna-esque spot as a commentator just for having been involved in the paperwork in regards to that. Damn, I never, man, that would be so crucial because like Ack knows that you could trust him, so he could let you watch that content. And he knows that you would probably keep your mouth shut about it, right? So like that would be the additional layer of what Trap Lord Ross could eventually bring to the table, is if you had access to stuff like that. I'm interested in more espionage in your career, you know?
That's like a 1090 Jake move, you know what I mean? I feel like Jake might, get his hands on, buy an illegal copy of the Youngboy tapes and release those to the world. But people want to say Vlad's the police, but like, bro, academics, like, what I'm saying, it surprised me that he would even reveal that he had compromising information on Youngboy, which he said, right? So,
but that was at the heart, at the most heated moment with them beefing too, right?
yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe that was before, or
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. I mean, it really blew my mind. I didn't even put it in the documentary because I didn't really want to stoke the flames. But like, it really blew my mind that academics did that post outside the Beverly Center where Quando's
Oh well,
Quando's
he
cousin
tried to
got
play dumb
ambushed
about
by.
that. You think that was intentional?
It's hard to believe it's not, just because like academics is a smart guy and it was in the midst of all of the Youngboy beef, and it's just like, bro, it's hard to believe that coincidence when he's like taking sides with Dirk and dissing Youngboy and then posting that. But then again, Axe defense, he was like, bro, I'm just posting the Beverly Center, I'm just in LA doing my thing. But it was like, I'm pretty sure the pic had like the gas station in it as well and stuff. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I don't want to think that that's what he was doing. But then again, Ack's a smart guy, bro. Ack would have been posting all the news clips at the Beverly Center when that shit went down. So, like, I don't know. But he obviously posts a lot of stuff. So maybe that was an oversight.
I mean, if he's really smart, then he'd be smart enough to troll and then never admit that he was trolling.
I mean, a lot of
Which
people
that
in
is
this
where he's at
space-
right now.
A lot of people in this space do like to throw a stone and hide their hands. I'm not necessarily saying that's what he did, because I could also believe he truly didn't know. The Beverly Center is a famous place, so
Right.
I guess. But it's kind of like, it's like that thing of like someone from O Block, like they just so happen to be posting a story at the Dolce & Gabbana store in the Gold Coast, and it's sort of like, okay, yeah, that is a place you might want to go shopping, but we know that's where Duck lost his life. So I'm not saying that's happened, but I'm saying it's like it would be akin to that in the middle of a beef,
Yeah. Oh, this is a real famous bus stop. Yeah, this is a real famous bus stop. That kind of thing,
You know what I'm saying? Maybe Lil Durk just was catching the bus that day. You know what I'm saying? Who knows?
This is a real famous bus stop. If you could like see Percocet through a camera lens, that clip right there to me felt like it was bussing. Maybe Molly too. I don't know. He was just feeling a little too good in that clip. I don't know.
I ain't tried the perks, bro. You know what I'm saying? Might have to come out there and feel like Dirk for a minute.
You'd love it. Hey, speaking of, has the Brick Baby case gone cold for you? You were implicating him in a few things for a minute there.
Hey, that was the Quando video. You know what I mean? I feel like fate was on Brick Baby's side because you know what I'm saying. A lot of people were pointing the finger at him 1 minute, but you know what I'm saying? I don't want to put Brick Baby in it. His star has risen a lot since I was investigating him. I mean, like, let's be real. It does seem pretty obvious that Brick Baby knew what was going on with all that stuff. But you know what I'm saying? Nobody's been caught for it still. But like, it's a pretty brazen crime. I'll be real with you. The murder of Lil Pab, rest in peace to him. And obviously it was awful what Quando went through and, was filmed at the scene with everything. But like the murder of Lil Pab, like shooting someone up outside the Beverly Center, that's that's in the same league as what they did to FBG Duck. And I don't think for a second, I do not think for a second that the cops aren't all over that. And it took them a few years to lock up the guys that got Duck, but they were on it. And now only now we're seeing the CCTV footage of the cars come out, and all the different evidence and the snitches that they've got. Bro, they're gonna solve that case eventually, bro. And we'll find out eventually, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in Brick's defense, like the first thing he told me was like I was out of town, so I never really questioned him beyond that. It's like he was out of town. He was out of town. Like if there's some crazy trail of information that could somehow connect him to it, then I guess we'll maybe find out one day. But I don't know.
But I believe Brick Baby also said the last guy we lined up got $1 million. 100K is not enough.
I mean, rappers say all kinds of stuff trying to sound tough, right? I wouldn't put it past him to have just invented that scenario in his head at that moment, right?
No, I feel you. I feel you. That could be true. That could be true. I mean, it's a tricky one, right? Because it's like, is Brick Baby really doing the smart rapper thing of almost like, well, everybody thinks that he lined up this thing, so why not rap about it and try and capitalize on some clout off the back of it? Because surely you wouldn't make that song had you actually been involved in it.
That's
And
what I'm
also,
saying. Like, yeah, if you and if he was there or if he had actually done it, hell no, he would never say something like that in a song. He'd be terrified. He's not Vaughn. He's not like I know Brick Baby, and as much as he is committed to his gangsterdom and also to the content and whatnot, this is also like a family man. I realized because me and him went to the Drake concert together with my girl and two of our female Plug Talk employees, right? And as the clock came closer and closer to midnight, the girls are all standing up, cheering and dancing for Drake, and me and Brick Baby are like sitting down, smoking weed, and like I'm just sort of realizing like, oh, he's actually, I'm forgetting that he's actually like me, where he's up at 5 or 6 in the morning dealing with the kid, which in my mind it's like, oh, Brick Baby must be in the studio until 5 or 6 in the morning, but he's not really at that place in his life anymore at this point, you know.
yeah, man. I hope it's one of those cases where it's kind of like he's capitalizing and cashing in on the allure of being associated with some of the street activity, because we don't want to see Rookie of the Year getting locked up on a RICO now, do we?
If I had Quando coming in for an interview, though, I would probably have to say maybe don't come in that day, Brick, because I wouldn't want. Maybe he's heard the stories that you put out there, and I wouldn't want Quando to get the wrong idea.
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna get Quando in LA anytime soon.
Well, that's a good point too. Although I would like to, because God, the music is really hitting, and that's what's great about like figuring out that I like Quando so much is that there's like 8 albums I haven't listened to, so I got like so much shit to go through. And also, you reminded me of what a goated project AI Youngboy 2 or whatever is, because that's like really, I mean, I've listened to like most of his albums, and that's just got to be the one, right?
It's the one, man. It's the Carter 3 for this generation. And I feel like it was really doing the documentary and really digging into like every single track on that album and really taking in everything he was saying, that really made me think that like I think AI Youngboy 2 might be the best rap album of like the modern generation. Full stop. Like nothing better. So much versatility. The guy's showing so much of a range of emotions. All the songs sound like nothing you've ever heard before. And then when you actually tune into what he's saying, he's talking some real shit.
Yeah, and I was watching the what was it, like the Rap Radar interview that Youngboy did, and he suggests his list of his favorite albums, and AI Youngboy 2 is not on there, but he does say 38 Baby 2, which I had not previously heard. I went and listened to it the other day. It is pretty good, but I on first listen, I don't think I could really put it up there with AI Youngboy 2. Maybe there's something about it that he likes that I'm not necessarily picking up on. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one, man. He puts out so much music, I feel like it probably, this is just a complete guess, but like I think all those albums probably really remind him of like certain times in his life. You know what I mean?
Which album
Like,
would you say is the most different, like sonically goes in the most polarizing direction that's different than all the other ones? Because for the most part, like the production's like largely the same across the board. It's like every album pretty much has some murder music, some pain music. It's like very, it's not like he has like a Lil Wayne Rebirth, right? Where it just totally goes in a different direction.
I would say he kind of does a little bit. I think it's, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it's I Rest My Case. And he kind of does a kind of Rage album, which is, it's kind of like a little bit Yeet, Lil Uzi, Playboy Carti inspired, to be honest. And I think that's really why a lot of people were kind of really excited for this like supposed Carti Youngboy collab album. Because if you go and check that one out, I think it's I Rest My Case.
Okay.
It really does have a lot of these like rage beats, and I think it works really well for him. It's not my favorite kind of like hip hop subgenre, but I think it does work super well for him. Another that I would say is very underrated is the one he did with Birdman from the Bio. It's just got that real southern like Birdman's barely even on the album too, which is probably for the best. But like it's just got that real like just like swampy southern bluesy, but then like real gangster shit. And there's a couple of just really inspiring songs on there. But yeah, I Rest My Case definitely stands out. I would say as like the most sonically different.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to that on the drive home today. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. What do we have to look forward to? What might be the next thing that we see? And are you happy with the views and the traction that the Youngboy thing has gotten? I know it's not maybe as explosive as Vaughn, but it's got to be sort of in the ballpark, right?
It's a tricky one because it's like it's not quite on the level of Von, but it's probably one of the best things that I've done. You know, it's nearly touching 2 mil in just over a week.
And you lost like 2 million views on the first Vaughn upload, right? So when we see that it has like 8, it actually has 10.
So it's maybe a little bit less than that, but like, yeah, look like close to. It's probably close to touching 10 total. But this is the thing. It's like, had the Von thing not happened, the Youngboy thing would have been one of, if not my biggest hit, right? So it's kind of like, it's a little bit bittersweet because it's like, I know the Von thing was like a complete one of a kind. But you know what I'm saying? I'm very, very happy. I'm very grateful that people watched it and enjoyed it. And I think as well, I think part of that is because it's had less controversy than the Von thing. I think the Von thing came with so much of like people trying to shut me down, people getting the video successfully taken down, you know, the hate, the beef, Von not being here anymore, his family coming at me. Whereas the Youngboy thing, maybe because Youngboy's alive and a lot of the people I have spoken about, they're all very hush, sticking to the code. There wasn't really much back and forth. There wasn't much like social media sparring that I could use to promote the project. But I'm very happy with it, and the people that have watched it have responded really well. But as far as what's coming next, I want to finish that Quando documentary that I was talking about. That one's like really important to me. You know, maybe you should go to 33rd Street in Savannah and like go and interview Quando if that's possible. Because
I would love
when that drops,
I'm there. Let's do it. That's a great idea. I'll get my Angela Yee on. I'll pull up. Yeah.
yeah, in the back of the rolls, that might be the one. But after that, I'm doing a big UK story on a guy called Suspect from Active Gang. And no one knows much about this guy in America, probably. But like this guy, he's basically like the King Von of the UK.
So you're telling me Suspect, the guy that we have in here doing the news, that he's a cold-blooded killer? I had no idea.
Overseas, he's got hella bodies. So it turns out. But yeah, this is a super interesting story about a guy. He essentially murdered 2 people and then fled the UK to Kenya. And he couldn't get, like, the police couldn't find him for 2 years. And in that 2 years, he released, like, music non-stop, just bragging about these murders that he had done. And then eventually, they actually did catch him and bring him back to England. It's a crazy story.
Wow, that does sound great. I gotta tune into that for sure. All right, thank you very, very much to Chapelo Ross. Anybody who's watching this, make sure you subscribe to his channel, but you probably don't need me to tell you that. Tune into the Youngboy documentary, which, by the way, I did watch on Patreon, and even though I have not watched the YouTube version, so I don't know what I would have been missing, it definitely had a lot of the extracurricular stuff. I like just the image of Lit Yoshi shooting the Draco with one hand. He looks like he's about to fall over while he's doing it. Like I just can't get that image out of my head.
There's also that shot at the start that I couldn't put in YouTube where 10 from NBA just like shoots off the Draco on top of a car just on live, just letting it off.
Yeah, and that wasn't even like that was like a year ago. That was like not even a long time ago. That was amazing. All right.
They're wilding out, man.